Mr. President, Prime Minister, we welcome your personal participation in today's open debate. We thank the SG and the briefers for their briefings. We believe that the topic proposed by the Greek presidency is most topical. Maritime security issues occupy an important place in the architecture of global stability and security, and without a doubt they deserve the attention of responsible members of the international community. Having said that, we should underscore that the majority of problems we're discussing at today's debate, transnational organized crime, the illicit arms trade, drugs trafficking, human trafficking, and the illegal exploitation of marine resources, they are not part of the Security Council's remit. Rather, they fall within the purview of other UN system bodies, first and foremost the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, as well as the Third Committee of the General Assembly. All these challenges, without a doubt, are very serious, but they should be considered in the relevant fora, which possess the relevant expertise. Thus, when it comes to maritime security, the Security Council should focus on those aspects which pose a direct threat to international peace and stability. What falls within this category, by the way, is the risk of global supply chain disruption, mentioned in the concept note prepared for today's event. We note that of late, we've seen an increased number of actions aimed at creating artificial impediments and threats to maritime trade. The stability of this trade is important for all countries. For small island states and for coastal developing countries, in particular, it is a matter of survival. The actions I mentioned build upon the so-called unilateral coercive measures. Western states, and especially EU member states' favorite way of imposing on others their own political paradigms and preferences, which are at times rather exotic. UCMs are a priori illegal. Their use contravenes international law. Hence, Western countries' attempts to justify their illegal actions at sea by referring to the UCMs they themselves introduced is at odds with a maxim that dates back to the times of Roman law. No party can take undue advantage of its own wrongdoing. References to supposed attempts to circumvent UCMs are used to label some vessels as belonging to the so-called shadow fleet. This term isn't internationally recognized, nor is there any transparent international mechanism underpinning it. Actions against civilian vessels at sea are flagrant and unprecedented. They're comparable, perhaps, to piracy, the difference being that it's NATO countries that are trying on the role of Baltic Sea pirates for size. The internet was recently awash with images of Estonian patrol vessels trying to seize by force a tanker sailing in international waters. The captain of the vessel was given an ultimatum: change course and sail into Estonian territorial waters. 2 attempts were made by an assault team to board the tanker from a helicopter. When they failed to do so, an Estonian Navy craft literally tried to ram the tanker. All this was done on the pretext, a pretext which is underpinned by no international legal grounds, the pretext of combating the shadow fleet. This is not the first such instance. There were others as well. Such actions, even in territorial waters, would have been a flagrant violation of the right of peaceful passage. In international waters, they are an attack on the freedom of navigation. These are fundamental norms of customary international law codified in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, dating back to 1982. The inviolability of these norms, as well as of the principle of flag state exclusivity, has ensured the stability and predictability of the international maritime trade system. This is why UNCLOS contains a closed and rather limited list of situations in which a vessel flying a foreign flag may be stopped for inspection. You won't find, neither in the list nor in the Convention as a whole, a single mention of the so-called shadow fleet. We'd therefore like to remind you, and remind the newly minted Baltic pirates and their EU cheerleaders, that stopping a vessel on any other grounds not listed in the convention is by definition a grave attack on the freedom of navigation and the right of peaceful passage or transit passage. The unacceptable behaviour of EU countries, therefore, sets a dangerous precedent. Were other states to follow in their footsteps, global supply chains would be disrupted and maritime trade would simply grind to a halt. They've made a habit of conducting such illicit actions using NATO naval capabilities. This path leads directly to military escalation and to serious threats being posed to maritime security. President, another example of Western states' actions to undermine maritime security is the terrorist attack committed against 2 Nord Stream gas pipelines in September of 2022. This was in the Baltic Sea. This crime was committed in Danish and Swedish exclusive economic zones, outside any armed conflict zone. These attacks had the most serious environmental and environmental consequences, as well as consequences for energy and freedom of shipping. Despite the fact that since the Nord Stream pipeline terrorist attacks, almost 3 years have elapsed, those who organized it and executed these attacks have neither been identified nor held accountable. The Russian Federation has on many occasions raised this issue at the Security Council. We've proposed crafting a product which would have set an unambiguous signal about the need to conduct a comprehensive investigation into what happened with the participation of all interested parties. And yet all of our initiatives were blocked by Western members of the Council on every occasion. Meanwhile, Germany, Denmark and Sweden deliberately cut us off from the investigation. The conclusion that was drawn by the so-called investigators is that the gas pipelines were, in fact, blown up after all. This is the real cost of Western delegations' statements today about their supposed concern about maritime security. We believe that it is your actions which pose a direct threat to maritime security, as well as inaction on accountability for specific crimes targeting cross-border undersea infrastructure. I thank you.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.